everyone. Uh, Before I introduce myself, I wanted to get to know all of you a little bit better. So, with a show of hands, just answer these questions for me. Are you interested in saving money, sustainability, repairing your clothes so you don't have to keep buying more and more every time something doesn't fit or breaks a little bit? If you say yes to any of these, New Magazine might be for you. Not just new as in brand new, but new as in the verbal stem to sew and Japanese, and new as in contemporary, modern, and revived. My name is Lyn Collver, and I'm a designer who cares a lot about the intersection between culture, art, design, and fashion. I created new to appeal to those who might be interested in alternative subcultures, sustainability, saving money, and exploring new fashion styles they haven't tried before. The need for sustainability in this modern age won't change, especially as textile waste is one of the largest contributors to pollution and wildlife endangerment. Furthermore, microtrends online also contribute to encouraging people to buy more and more clothing while it's popular and then discard it as soon as the trend is over. So, to continue, some quick statistics. Over 1 billion pieces of new clothing are produced each year, which helps contribute to the massive 92 million tons of textile waste every year, and 60% of new clothing materials tend to be made from plastic, putting more microplastics in both us and our oceans, which ends up contributing to lots of health problems for many people. And less than 1% of clothing is recycled into garments, both by companies and people themselves. So that begs the question, how can new help? By bringing back punk. To start, I'd like to reintroduce the ethic of modifying and recycling your own clothes. For years, starting even before the punk movement of the 70s, people have been modifying and recycling their clothes to fit the styles they want to wear and altering them to fit them when they don't fit anymore. New encourages this by providing easy to follow and easy to complete tutorials on how to alter your own clothing and explore new styles. Initially, I wanted to take a lot of inspiration from Japanese fashion magazines from the early 2000s. They're really fun, they're playful, and they showcase a lot of unique styles we don't see here a lot in America. I wanted to incorporate aspects of Japanese design into my magazine while also following conventions to make it read well in English. In terms of showcase fashion styles, I wanted to incorporate both Western and Japanese alternative subcultures to educate the reader about them. I still wanted to keep the punk spirit as well, so I tried to incorporate a lot of bright colors, bold text, and elements of punk throughout the design scene. To begin, let me just explain what alternative subcultures are. I already mentioned punk as one of the most famous, but a lot of alternative fashion comes from music and political movements that came out of punk, actually, with goth, emo, and a lot of Japanese ones that later came on inspired by them. They've gained a lot of momentum in the past few years with increased interest in learning about them due to their unique fashion styles, as well as the music. So I wanted to focus on not only these styles, but also due to my own interest and involvement in them, introduce them to a larger variety of people and including the Japanese ones that are less well known here. For my capstone, I went through this process of research, branding, developing the actual magazine content, and finally adapting it into new forms to make it versatile in this modern age. So, step 1, research. I started by conducting a survey, which involved 46 respondents between the ages of 18 and 50 to ask about their thoughts on sustainability and fashion. Among the participants, there's a strong interest in learning to mend and alter clothes, with 76% of respondents expressing interest. Around 63% of them had also said they had already altered or mended their clothing before. So that brought me to step 2. Having already had some personal experience and knowledge of alternative fashion, the research part for me was probably the easiest step. So when it came to names, I struggled a lot first. I got really attached to the name Cho, which is the Japanese word for butterfly. I really enjoyed the theme of metamorphosis and the idea of using that to simulate DIY and changing your clothes, as well as the familiar difference of alternative subcultures in fashion. However, the name didn't really make sense in English and it was really hard to make into a good logo. And I got the suggestion to make it more French to kind of have a high fashion feel, but that got rid of the original meaning and it didn't really stick as much. Other names I tried out also didn't stick until I stumbled upon new, which is the verbal stem to sew in Japanese. And it also evokes the idea of new, revived, and noteworthy, kind of evoking also the idea of new goth and new metal, which are popular in the lines. So once the name was decided, another challenge came, the logo. I spent a lot of time on this because I wanted it to feel alternative and originally drifted towards the black letters because of it, but it didn't really feel as professional and kind of felt kitschy. So even when I lived with them myself, I ended up drifting more towards something more elegant that flowed with fashion, but then also still evoked it. So in order to create the final logo mark, I cut out parts of the letter, thickened it up, and I created a thread and needle to evoke the DIY feel for the accent mark. Next, going on to the color palette and logo type, I use bus script for the main logo. It doesn't have a lot of readability at a distance because it has a lot of thinness in some areas. So I thickened it up, as I mentioned. And then for my headers, I try to keep it a bit more classic with a serif header, cormorant, and then I kind of switched it up with a sans serif, Quasimodo. And then through my own bias and wanting to stray away from the stereotypical red and black, my main colors are hot pink and a brown black, which I chose to complement with some pastels to evoke that alternative feel. Thus, I ended up with the final logo, overcoming a large hurdle in the project that ended up being a lot more than I thought it would. Alongside the logo, I used the same technique of cutting out parts of the letter forms to create a pattern that complemented it to use throughout the branding. So that goes to step 3, the magazine content. For the actual magazine, I wanted to emphasize working with the grid, not only to stay organized, but to also add a more complete and finished look to the final product. I experimented with both a classical book grid as well as a modular grid. And I found with a modular grid, I had a lot more freedom to break conventions and experiment with the layout. I sourced a lot of images from both sources online as well as friends and myself, editing them to each fit the article and match the overall feel of the magazine. I wanted to explore a number of different subcultures, which means sourcing authentic images very important to me. Furthermore, I split the magazine into 4 sections: customize, sustain, subculture, and rebook. Each of these sections is meant to provide information for the audience to round out their experience of fashion, teaching more sustainable practices with customizing your own clothes, and learning about environmental causes related to fashion. And another section gives information about subcultures and gives output inspiration. All these help bring you a bit closer to its goal of being both inclusive and informative, introducing different styles along the way. I made sure that these were both approachable to longtime members of alternative communities, but can also be approachable to the newcomers who might not know as much. Or finally, here's some more applications I did. I created mock-ups for web and app versions of the magazine because I know as much as I love print media, as much as I love to see racks of magazines in stores, they're not as popular anymore and things are becoming more and more digitized. So I wanted to make sure that the magazine was both applicable in web version, app versions, and just a digital PDF. And that meant that it would be versatile and then I could incorporate it throughout different versions. I wanted the app and web to have the same feel as the physical version, which became a challenge because I needed to consider accessibility, which was easier for me to do in print. Many sites are made either for laptop or PC, or they're made for phone. And there's not much of an easy switch between some of them. So I wanted to ensure that that versatility was there. So if you're switching from web to phone, it's going to look same or feel the same without making everything go into places they don't belong. In addition, I also mocked up the social media account, right? Like companies use social media as one of the main ways to gain reach in this modern age. And I thought showcasing that and showing how that can further bring people to you would be a good way to showcase the project. For the future, I'd like to create more editions of new, exploring different styles, stitches, and methods of sustainability. I think it would be helpful to have more complex tutorials starting from basic sewing machine alterations to dyeing of clothes. Furthermore, I would like to add more animations to the web version to make certain tutorials easier to follow and understand. Thank you for listening to my presentation. If you'd like more, you can check out my booth after the presentation. I have magazines to give out if you'd like, and you can get in touch with me if you have any questions.
Have you thought about making an entire suite of Instagram posts with just what is the answer to the environment? Huh? That's brilliant.
It is something I consider. I'm currently working on developing more of the social media aspect of the magazine, so I'm going to implement that into further versions. Sean?
So, as someone who has touched the sewing needle all twice in my life, um, I would love to learn how to sew, but I feel like I feel like it's kind of intimidating. Would this magazine have really beginner stuff, or would it be more catered towards people who are already kind of into it?
I have a collection of tutorials that range from very beginner and approachable like subjects for someone who's never done it before, as well as some more complex tutorials. That way it's approachable for everyone to be able to find new ways to alter their clothes. So if you've never touched a sewing needle in your life, don't worry. It has some things to do. Yes?
Do you think of other techniques like darning and or crocheting and using them?
I do actually cover darning in one of the articles in my magazine, but I do kind of cover crochet and knit because it's a huge aspect of being able to just like alter your own clothes because you can use those techniques not only to make your own clothes but to also repair them. Yes. Hello?
Have you considered introducing just one of the newsletter aspect of it?
I'd really like to add a newsletter in the future, something that's easy to sign up for and well designed so people can be notified about future initiatives and have little tutorials. Yeah.
Since you're planning on using like an array of both easy to difficult uh like techniques, are you planning on also making like a scale for readers to understand just where exactly that would fit, like how easy or difficult each process would be?
Yeah, so I haven't quite implemented it yet, but I'm currently working on a way to scale it to make the tutorials a bit more approachable to some people. I think for me to do that, I need to kind of get a bit of new guinea pigs to kind of try each of them out to kind of get that scale. But that's something that I'm working on at the moment.
Mm-hmm. One more question. Right? I have a question definitely from Justin, who says, would you consider adding material hits to magazines so people can practice?
Yes, that is something I'd love to do. Something I really like about Japanese magazines is a lot of Japanese magazines will have special editions that have gift boxes inside. And I'd like to include that with tutorials and sewing kits as well as other materials.
Thank you.